assemble or something like that?
Okay, we're on and live.
Good afternoon, everyone. My apologies. We had simple business that sometimes gets a little bit intricate, and that's what happens, so my apologies again. We will start off with the convening of the Board of Canvassers for today. What do we have for business?
So this is for the 26th Congressional District.
Yeah, just see if there's something I should read. All right, I'll read this as to what we're convening here. We, the State Board of Elections, constituting the State Board of Canvassers, having canvassed the whole number of votes given for the office of Representative in Congress in the 26th Congressional District, as enumerated at the special election held in said state on the 24th day of May 2011, according to the certified statements of said votes received by the State Board of Elections in the manner directed by law, do hereby determine and declare and certify that for the 26th Congressional District, Kathy Courtney Hochul was by the greatest number of votes given at said election duly elected representative in Congress, given under our hands in the city of Albany, New York, this 13th day of June 2011. Is that a motion required on that?
Second?
Aye.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
And we have to sign the certificates.
Sorry. One thing?
Oops, did I all sign that?
Only one, right?
Yep.
Mission complete?
Mission complete.
Thank you all. We'll now convene the regular meeting for today, Monday, June 13th. First item of business, the minutes of the April 1st and May 10th meetings. Have a motion to approve or any additions or deletions or?
I move that we adopt the minutes as drafted.
Have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Unit updates. Executive?
Want to do the introductions first, or?
Oh.
We'll make it up a little.
Before we,
Another 30 seconds there.
everyone would like to know who the executive directors are, so we'll start off with introducing ourselves here, and we'll work our way around the table and into the rest of the people who are attending here today.
All right, Douglas Kellner.
Evelyn Aquila.
Gregory Peterson.
My name is Jim Walsh.
Todd Valentine.
Kimberly Galvin.
Paul Collins.
Joe Burns.
Anna Svizzero.
Pat Campion.
Tom Conley.
John Conklin.
George Stanton.
Bill McCann.
Liz Hogan.
Bob Glenn.
Bob Warren.
Terry Grace, Amy Allo, League of Women Voters.
Thank you all. Now that we know everyone, we'll have the executive director's report. Bob Brehm and Todd Valentine.
You ready? You want to go first? You want to go first? Well, one of the ranking them, I guess, in some type of a priority. Todd and I visited the City Board of Election as part of our conversation with the senior staff on compliance with the Nysboe or list maintenance provisions. After our last board meeting, Todd and I reached out to Dawn and Pam at the board. They invited us down to actually have a conversation with them about the functionality of the system. Something we tried to do in 2008 to limited success, but The follow-up from that meeting I thought was very positive compared to some of the other dialogue we've had, as a genuine interest in how the system functions and how we can work together to overcome the outstanding obstacles. They shared the result, Dawn and Pam shared a report with their commissioners at their meeting on the 24th, and then Todd and I went back on the 31st and actually spoke with the commissioners. And the commissioners had approved, at that time, basically changed a decision they made earlier that prohibited the staff from engaging in a conversation with us on this subject. And so it was a good sign that we were moving in a more positive direction. And then on Friday, George was able to actually schedule and conduct the initial technical communication. You know, we talked about some items that needed to be dealt with, both short-term and long-term, but that we couldn't really confirm all of the what we described as should be able to happen until the technical people could talk and start to put together what are the technical things we have to overcome, how long will it take for them to make that list, and then how long will it take for the more integrated final phase of implementation. And then there are a number of steps along the way to start cleaning up the back file that will need to take place no matter what we do.
Bob, may I ask you, was this meeting reported to the Department of Justice?
Tomorrow.
Yep. Tomorrow, okay.
Unless they're watching right now.
No, that's important.
So that took, you know.
They knew we were meeting.
Yes, I know, but I wanted to know if the meeting was reported.
That took a great,
Yeah,
part of that period of time. And other than that, I think, there was a MOVE Act, the Uniform Law Commission met in Albany, and we attended that session. They're attempting to, promote a uniform law throughout the country that would deal with compliance issues with the MOVE Act. There's very few states that have actually signed on to that program yet, but we had discussions with, we participated in that session as part of our ongoing compliance with the MOVE Act. Other than that, I think it's just the ongoing fiscal and end of legislative session conversations that we've been holding and routine staff issues.
Well, the only thing I want to highlight is there, we had, and George, I don't know if you'll get to that with, but just to jump in front of you, is, we wanted to thank, we had 2 retirements in the last couple of weeks, both from George's unit and IT. We mentioned this in our report, but it's worth saying because they retired, went on to, I'm going to say greener pastures, but different pastures, both Dennis Caro and Monica Legue, and we had did a nice little send-off for both of them, each in their own way. But, and again, we want to thank them for their services. It's just one of those things that we always like to highlight, but it's nice to see.
Todd, could I ask one more question? I'm sorry to be asking questions, but how many federal bills are we trying to comply with at the present time?
Well, I don't know that we count them.
Hopefully all of them.
Yes, very good answer. I didn't see that, but I wanted you to give me the exact number of them that we know, because it seems like we have to let people go, and all we're doing is getting more and more things that we must carry out.
Yeah, I mean, our federal, it's hard to enumerate that, but, if I try to think in terms of chronological stuff, I mean, if you want to, either the Civil Rights, the Voting Rights Act, and their earlier incarnations, something we always have to work with. The National Voting Rights Act, the NVRA, is something we continue to monitor, as well as the more recent, the Help America Vote Act and the Military and Overseas Voter Improvement Act. I mean, those are the main pieces of legislation that we have to comply with on the federal level.
State statutes or what?
But it's they're all implemented not just on the federal level, but as Kim's pointing out, is on the state level as well.
Absolutely.
So
Yes,
we have our own state legislature. They see a need and they ask us to develop programs to implement whatever enforcement scheme, whatever area they want to enforce. So, and it's not done in a vacuum. I assure you. Certainly, they hear it from many sides, not just from the
Yeah.
agencies, but people outside the agency. So, we try to make it clear whenever a mandate is placed upon the agency, whether it be to the federal government, although it tends to fall on deaf ears, or comes with money. It's one or the other. It's never in between. On the state side, the money is a little harder to come by. I mean, I'm not saying it falls on deaf ears, but they do hear it. But they put agencies in the position of having to prioritize goals, because it gets to a certain point where it becomes impossible to do everything or to do it immediately. So you have to restructure the time frame in which you do that. And that's
I wasn't asking
just
that
the reality.
really for myself to be educated, because I know what.
Yeah, no, I
what's on it.
understand.
But I think for the public to know that also we're implementing the new voting machines over these couple of years too. And these all take people and money and energy, and I think people get the idea sometimes that the Board of Elections, 2 days a year they're busy.
Yeah.
And I just think we have to sometimes make the picture a little larger so that people understand that there's far more here than they can imagine.
Yeah, I mean, you have to be cognizant of that.
So
I mean,
just
we're-
saying two
we're
people
part of a large-
leaving, or
Yeah.
whatever, it hurts. It hurts.
It does. I mean, while we
That's
appreciate
the point I'm
it's good
trying
for
to make.
them that they've served the state well for these many years.
Yeah, I
It
know.
will, unfortunately, given the existing state economy, be very difficult to to work with those holes in our staff.
Thank you.
One item I forgot to add to the list, we had, over a period of time last year, undergone the federal EAC audit of the spending of the Help America Vote Act.
Yeah.
There were 3 items in their audit that at least 2 of them didn't take us by surprise. One, they responded in the audit that we needed to have the 5% match. At the time, we received the federal money, and the 5% match needed to be an account earning interest. So they had, OGS had calculated the money that went in and what the lost interest was. And we have that number now. The second item, they wanted us to have certain documentation to the staff members that were either full-time or part-time on HAVA. We had learned that, it's one of those programs, by the time we received the federal money to the time they gave us advice on how to do the program, there was an overlap. So by the time they gave us the instruction on how to comply with the program, from that point forward, we had the records the way they needed them, and then we documented for those individuals with information after the fact that said what work they did. The auditor pointed that out. It's something we have to deal with the EAC itself. And then the third item, and George has updated the report, was the fixed asset audit for the equipment that we bought to run Nysboe. So all 3 of those, we have a positive answer, and that answer will go to the EAC this week as part of our mitigation. We have collected enough of the 5% match, or we had other in-kind state expenditures. When we pay a state employee here, out of state funds, and they keep track of the project that they worked on related to Help America Vote Act, we get credit for that, as well as a few other programs that the state of New York does, like the full site access. So we had more than accounted for the missed interest money, and that will be the report that goes to the EAC this week. So I think it's a positive report. I think we've overcome the issues, but generally we respond, and hopefully by August it'll all be resolved.
Thank you, Todd. Thank you, Todd. Legal, please, Kim Galvin.
Thank you, Commissioner. Just to touch on a few things about the Department of Justice that Commissioner Aquila has already mentioned. They do pay quite a lot of attention to us, even though there's nothing generally active. We have several fronts that they either make formal or informal inquiries on a relatively regular basis. They have the nice voter situation with New York City and any updates there too. And as I said, they scheduled our next update to them tomorrow, so that we would be able to talk to the commissioners without any outstanding issues that we had before we reported back to them. And then we also have another branch of the Department of Justice still calling for some military voter statistical information from the last general election. And this is the same group that calls about moving the primary and any progress or lack of progress that we have on those issues. And they haven't started asked about the presidential primary yet, but I can assure them that we're paying attention to that as well. And all of those have, they have the consequences that they have at the state level, but they certainly have the federal implication as well. So we're doing our best to keep everybody informed and keep the wolves at bay, if you will, for a little longer till we see what ultimately comes out of this session. To that end, we continue to monitor and speak with our friends up the hill regarding any legislation that they pass that does in fact affect us. For example, I'm sure Liz will mention it today on their agendas, is an ethics bill that does require the State Board of Elections to do a variety of additional things. And so, there's a lot of monitoring and comment on those sorts of things. The cases that we've been moving along on, I mean, the main ones are, as you refer to them, double vote, overvote, Nysboe. The double vote case is near the end of negotiation, I think, with terms of a settlement. I know the overvote case has had a flurry of constant activity. Paul can update you on that. And then I'm not sure about...
When you say, we're very close to settlement of those two cases.
I know we're very close to the double vote one. I think we're close to the overvote one as well.
But they haven't. But there's no actual signed settlement agreement.
No, in the double vote, we have a final consent decree that was forwarded to us. Believe it or not, I'm having a conversation with Bob Warren about pixels versus font size, or things that are just absolutely incredible to me. But I think that case, for the most part, is, you agree on a lot of things and you find out, well, they don't use font size, they use pixel size. Oh, what the? But anyway, I think that they're all moving towards the end, and they've, for two seemingly small issues, you would think they really have taken an exorbitant amount of time. And the county, is dealing with petition circulation and every possible permutation of ballot access inquiry that you could ever have. It is pretty crazy, some of the various scenarios that you hear out, so we've been doing our best to keep them up to date with the best information as we have. And I think, did I forget anything? If I forgot anything, I'm sure Paul will fill you in. Other than that, that's what we've been doing.
We're still waiting for word from the State Supreme Court here in Albany on our motion to dismiss the Nassau County challenge to the implementation of the new systems. We're still waiting on another federal case challenging the constitutionality of using any type of voting machine. There's another case, another brief that's going to get filed in the circuit having to do with the ban on out-of-state petitioners, which some circuits don't accept, and the Second Circuit apparently has never precisely ruled on it. Although out-of-district ban, they did strike it as unconstitutional. And that's it.
And the AG is appearing for us today.
There is a case challenging the redistricting of the Nassau County Legislature, which for some reason we were named as a defendant in. And the reason we were named is they allege in their complaint that we set the political calendar of the state of New York, which is probably news to the state legislature. So there's a conference call on that at 3 o'clock today, and I would like to just get out of that case. We don't belong in that case, and hopefully we can get out of it without spending a lot of time and energy. But this is the time of year when we get all of the calls on petitioning and what have you.
And legislation.
Any further questions? Thank you. Election operations, Anna, please.
Thank you, Commissioners. Aside from the report that we have filed with you that's in your packet, clearly we prepared the documents following up to our election support in that special election that you just signed to certify the new congressional member from the 26th. We also have an update on voting equipment. We did conduct acceptance testing in Oneida County last week. Acceptance testing has to be done at each county board now. It doesn't make sense to do such small numbers centrally and require the boards to pay all of that additional shipping, which means we're paying our staff to travel to those sites. But we did do 27 units in Utica last week, most of them for Oneida County. There were a couple of units for some neighboring counties who came over to Oneida and cooperated with the testing there, and they appreciated the hospitality that Oneida provided and that also the services that our staff provided. We have an update to the certification notes that are in your packet. ES&S's update software is expected to be here tomorrow. We're expecting Dominions by the end of the week, so we'll be able to review those and wait for, we do have some testing criteria that has to be defined yet by SLI and by NYSTEC, but we're prepared to move forward with the functional testing that we'll be doing here to mitigate the costs of this testing effort. This morning, Dominion Central Count System was delivered here. We're waiting for new equipment that corresponds to this new software as well. ES&S is coming tomorrow to begin training using their new software. And I don't have anything else to add. Joe, do you have anything?
Just on the ballot redesign and usability, we have our session, our workshop scheduled with our expert Dana Chisnell for June 20th right here in the boardroom.
We don't have anything else for you.
Oh, happy birthday, Anna.
That's right.
Tomorrow.
Yes, I said.
Thank you.
She said tomorrow. She said
Flag
tomorrow.
Day. Thank you.
We'll make that part of our permanent record for this day.
There you go.
Congratulations.
Thanks for that parade yesterday, by the way.
Okay, if we have completed that session, we'll go on to the NVRA public information. John Conklin, please.
Thank you, Commissioner. Just a couple of things we'll talk about in addition to the written report. The annual report is completed and has been posted to the website. And Tom's going to talk a little bit about the MOVE Act in the 26th Congressional District.
Well, we did get our pre-election, our post-election surveys back from all our counties, all 7 counties. They were very cooperative in doing that, so obviously I thank them for that. And looking at the numbers that came back, we seem to be doing very well, even though it's not an apples-to-apples comparison. Comparing to the 2010 performance of the state, we've improved in every segment, both in how many ballots we get back, how many of those ballots actually get counted, and decrease the number that get rejected. So, and that was pretty much across the board. So it was really good to see that. And that's it, unless anyone has any questions about that.
Campaign finance, Ms. Hogan.
Thank you, Commissioner. Just a couple of points in addition to the report that is in the packet. Obviously, that report just continues to give you an update as to the day-to-day operations of campaign finance and enforcement. We are still waiting for the new Reg 6214 to go into effect, which establishes the higher contribution limits based upon the calculations pursuant to the cost of living increase. We're still waiting for that. I had hoped that we might see it by now, but we have not. Additionally, it's my understanding that there's language before the legislature today to be voted upon. I just want the commissioners to be aware that in the context of that ethics bill, as Kim mentioned, there are some additional responsibilities given to enforcement here at the board. First, let me point out that it's my understanding that the proposal in this bill relative to campaign finances that the fine, the civil penalty for non-filing will go from a maximum of $500 to a maximum of $1,000 should this pass and be signed by the governor. And it is a program bill, so we're anticipating that'll happen. I'd also like to tell you that there is a new provision that potentially will come here that has to do with the failure to file 3 or more financial reports in an election cycle relative to that candidate. The penalty in that is not to be in excess of $10,000. It's another lawsuit that we would have to bring. Additionally, there's a provision that relates to a candidate or someone acting on a candidate's behalf or on behalf of the political committee of that candidate who accepts in excess of the contribution limit and does so with intent to violate the statute. If that were to happen, it's subject to a lawsuit brought by the board, and the penalty would be the amount of the excess plus up to $10,000 in penalty. And then there is some language that appears in the Art 16 of the election law, which is relative to the enforcement proceedings that we bring in Supreme Court. And it provides some interesting, shall I say, some interesting factors that now have to be considered by the court relative to non-filings and the actions we bring there too. I would say that that is anticipated to go into effect, and so I just want you to be aware that those are additional responsibilities that we will have.
What is it effective?
It's effective immediately upon signature of the governor. I'd also just like to discuss with you, and I believe we'll do that in executive session. Bill and I both want to talk to you about several pending litigations that we're involved in that we would like to bring to your attention for some discussion. Bill, do you want to talk about the independent? Go ahead.
Sure. One of the other requirements in the bill concerns the board promulgating regulations relative to independent expenditure disclosure. What's an interesting aspect of that is that it's unique in that our current regulations don't spell out every specific iteration of what would trigger an obligation to file a campaign financial disclosure. The regulation language is rather short, but depending on how you read it, it does raise issues as to what level of specificity you have to go in the regulation to spell out disclosures of independent expenditures, which would be in effect by January of next year. So obviously we anticipate that will pass, and there'll be some future discussions with the board and among staff to determine the implementation of what the scope of that language is and how to best implement. But that is of significance, and so you'll be hearing a lot more about that.
There is one other aspect to the ethics bill that doesn't go to a responsibility of the board in terms of enforcement or campaign finance issues, but directly. But it does affect us, and it provides that this new commission that's being established, this JCO, that they provide an educational component relative to the election law, which concerns me a bit because I really don't know what that is supposed to encompass or how that meshes with our position on providing an educational component relative to election law. So that's an unknown.
I mean, I think the big concern there is, you know, if someone attends one of those trainings and they say, well, they told me X, and maybe, you know, we don't know what the X is. You know, it's an issue of coordination and to what extent that would need to take place. So it just raises some other aspects that we may want to look at.
That's all I have.
ITU, George Stanton, please.
Afternoon. In addition or in summary of the printed report that you have, IT has still been working with the staff from enforcement on finalizing the new EFS software. We've getting down to the point of fine-tuning it now, so they've had the latest version for a couple of weeks, I guess, and you know, in between their training sessions and so forth in the field, they've been going over that and coming up with any tweaks that we need to do to finalize that. We've also, now that we've got HP back on board, they've been looking at what needs to be done to fix the Nysboe system so we can receive the new party information, the Green Party information, and the other couple of parties that we have to track now. And we'll be getting a handle on how long that's going to take here in the near future. It turned out to be a little more complex than I thought it was. Also, excuse me, we'll be working on the MOVE system with CITL to decide what data has to go back and forth between the Nysboe system and the federal system to make all that work, and also what modifications have to be done to the communications between the county and the Nysboe to collect the data we're going to need to pass along. So we'll be getting to work on that shortly, I'm sure. As Todd mentioned, we did have 2 retirements in my unit, 1 programmer and 1 help desk person. That's a loss of 1/3 of my help desk staff. So it's going to, with the you know, the largest filing we get on July 15th, where everybody has to file, it's going to be interesting to see how that all works out. I'm sure they're not going to be able to keep up, you know, on a real-time basis with the calls, so people may get a little frustrated with waiting times. We'll do the best we can. The other thing is we did meet with the New York City Board of Elections technical staff to talk about catching up their file maintenance, to do a short-term file maintenance for felons and deceased. We decided that we're going to, just to make things more expedient, we're going to send them a list of the current matches for felons and deceased voters so that they can work that list and cancel those that they find to match. We don't have a plan for doing the same thing yet with the duplicates, the moves, because we need some input from both their execs and our execs before we go ahead with that. But we're talking about doing something like that, similar to what they did a couple of years ago, where they send out letters and cancel people. The issue with everything, all 3 of those areas, is the fact that with the batch process like that, we have no way to handle the non-matches. So they're just going to remain in the system for the time being, and they'll continue to show up as possible matches until we get a more permanent solution. And we've talked about, you know, what some possible permanent solutions are. Of course, New York City is concerned about doing their bipartisan approval on every transaction that takes place. So we've talked to with their vendor about the possibility of instead of the processing take place the same as everybody else, it gets sent back to their Avid system, which has that logic built into it for the bipartisan sign-off before it comes back to us and cancels the person and so forth. So we're just taking a look at that. They're taking a look at it on their end, and we're taking a look at it on our end to see what, if any, kind of well, I know on their end, there's going to be a lot of processing that's going to have to take place, and I think we're going to have to make some modifications too, but we're just looking at that from a high level right now to see, where we can go to make that happen.
Thank you. Under old business, an update on the request by Suffolk County Board of Elections, pilot program efforts. Ann and Joe?
We finally received a request outlining the pilot project that Suffolk envisioned for using uncertified software to accommodate a 30-inch ballot in the Dominion voting system. They've laid out some groundwork. The letters, I believe, have been shared with all of you. We were unable to reach the appropriate staff to answer just a couple of minor questions for us. The only thing that I think we would add, other than clarifying those couple of questions, and they had staff that was off on vacation last week, so they were not available to us. The only thing that we'd add, that we shared in an email here in the agency, was in that it's uncertified software. When we did the pilot project in 2009, we added a feature to the audit that required that there be a 100% hand count of any contest where the percentage between potential winning and losing candidates was 1% or less. So if the board is of the mind to include that in the proposal that Suffolk presented to us, we have no objections to this pilot project. We do want to make it clear, however, that it is new software. It is not completely developed yet. We expect to see it by August 1st. We intend to do some functional testing here before we will deliver it to Suffolk County. It is not even included in the upgrade software that's being tested right now. It would be in an additional upgraded version at some point next year. So we had that conversation with the vendor to be clear when this was going to be available to other counties. And we truly don't have any issues with it other than getting those couple of small answers to our questions and your consideration of adding that audit feature.
Well, I certainly agree that we should add the audit requirement. Is there a timeline for formal approval by the board? Are you suggesting that we formally approve it today before you get the answers to those questions, or that we would formally approve it at our July meeting and you'll have a resolution to submit to the commissioners?
I think we prefer that it be approved today. The questions are not make or break as far as the pilot goes. It just clarifies the use of the systems. We were under the impression that every election district has its own scanner, so that even in sites that are served, one site that serves multiple election districts, you still have to go to your own scanner. You can't go to any scanner in the site. And when we spoke at the conference in April with the board, they kind of represented that that wasn't the case. So we're not sure if they're changing how they deploy scanners. Again, neither answer affects the pilot project. We just wanted to be clear how the systems were being used in Suffolk.
I think we can probably, approve the pilot project subject to some of the minor modifications that are adjustments that that Ann is talking about.
All right. Well, if we're approving what's called Suffolk County Extended Ballot Pilot Project Plan version 6.03, that's what we're being asked to approve?
Yes, with the addition of the audit feature.
All right, and do we have the language? We're going to add that as the third paragraph at the bottom of the first page.
We can do that, and I have the language from the 2009 pilot. We can
We
simply
want to read
copy
it
that.
so that we copy it in, and we'll. It's just that I think we need to have approved text.
All right.
And if you'll recall, this became an issue in the Chautauqua County election. The exact text of the audit provision was the subject of a lot of back and forth that was eventually
Suffolk's
resolved
plan
favorably.
says they'll do a separate 3% audit of just the units that are doing the 30-inch ballot so that they're not missed in any way because they're part of the bigger picture. They get their own drawing so we're okay with that. The language from the 2009 pilot said, a hand audit of all the ballots tabulated by that device if the outcome does not, if the outcome of the hand audit does not match the canvas report, a 100% audit is to be conducted. That, I think we're clear on as far as the additional, the break between the units being used that don't meet 30%.
Anna, I'm sorry, but it's very important to me, if we're going to vote on something today, that we have the exact text that we're voting on.
I have it right here.
So you can't comment on it while you're reading the text. So
No,
either-
I was just explaining that they're doing the two sections.
No, you can't do that. I'm not going to vote on it if we don't have something, it's not in writing in front of me, which is annoying to begin with.
Well, I have it right here. I can pass it up or I can read it.
You can read it, but then you can't comment on it until you finish reading it.
I'm okay. Okay. I'm with you. Conduct a 100% hand audit of all ballots in election districts when the difference in the result of the election between the potential winning and losing candidates in any contested election on the ballot is 1% or less.
So that's the additional language that we're adding,
To their proposal.
and that's being added at the bottom of the first page as the third paragraph of addressing risks to the integrity of the election.
Page 5, post-election talks about the 3%, you could add another line in there.
Yeah, I was wondering why.
Well, do you want to put it as is that a better place to put it as a bullet in phase 5?
You could put it in both if you like.
No, I don't think it's necessary in both, but I think making a third bullet on, a bullet after the second bullet in phase 5.
Okay.
Because that's the 3% audit, this is the next step in the audit.
Okay. Everyone clear on this?
Yep.
And those are the election districts in the pilot, not
Right.
the count, not the EDs outside of
Only
the
Correct.
pilot towns.
Correct.
And isn't the 3% audit something we do in school?
But that's in the statute. That's in the statute.
Yeah.
Here's the actual language.
But we're only going to use the 1%?
Now, where it says expand audit within the universe of pilot project machines in the event of discrepancies. What does that mean, Anna?
This is what we understood the board to say, that the audit would get, that there would be a separate drawing for 3% of the machines used in the pilot project, separate from the 3% of the machines that were using the certified software.
But, so the escalation provisions would apply just to the pilot project, but would be the same as what the current escalation provisions are in the regulations?
Yes.
And then we're adding the additional provision that if the margin is less than 1%, they have to do a hand count.
Yes.
And I think the other question that came up during the pilot, just to be clear, is if the 1%, they wouldn't have to audit all of the extra part of the audit. It's the contest that's within 1%, or the contest. It's not the whole ballot if they have multiple contests.
Agreed.
Subject to the addition of Anna's reading, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the Suffolk County Extended Ballot Pilot Project Program version 06.03.
Second?
And
Second.
that wording be
As
added.
amended.
As amended.
As amended.
All right, motion made and seconded, all in favor? Aye, opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried? None? Thank you very much. Anna? Under new business. Vote on a resolution to approve HAVA funding for Cycle Move Act. John Conklin, Tom Conley. Any comments?
Yeah, I'll move the resolution. I mean, we have all these.
Made and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Item B, Vote on a resolution to approve funding for tasks related to pre-election testing and post-election audit research grant.
You want to just briefly summarize what we're proposing to do here?
We were fortunate enough to have been awarded a grant from the EAC. The amount of the grant is $230,000. We submitted an application for a blended research project to review the pre-election logic and accuracy testing that we do, and also to contemplate any new ways to serve the audit intent in the post-election concepts related to elections. That $230,000 is not paid out. It is a reimbursable funding stream. So we would have to pay for whatever services, travel, or whatever's involved in the work that we do and submit those receipts to the EAC. So we're simply requesting that we use HAVA money for those purposes and reimburse the HAVA fund with the reimbursement check from the EAC when that arrives.
So moved. Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried. Item C, vote on a resolution to apportion 100% of the 2011 Health and Human Services Poll Site Access Grant Award, which is over $695,000. Any questions? We have John Conklin, Tom Kiley. If not, we'll accept
This
the
is,
motion.
this is just the formal apportionment and using the same formula that we've used before. I move the resolution.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Item D, is discuss and approve the new affidavit ballot envelopes to include new political parties, green in particular, and any other changes that may be necessary. Anna and Joe Burns?
Well, so I'm ready to move. So moved.
Well,
Do you want to see it?
no, we have this
Yeah, we
draft
all have
here,
it,
and
yeah.
as we've discussed, this has become somewhat controversial because we've received a number of comments
Yes, I know.
from good government groups and others suggesting that that the intent of the legislation was to make a single form, and even on this form, it is confusing to voters as to why there would be a voter registration form at the bottom. So, at the very least, I would suggest that we need to add language here below Part C and above the registration form explaining that in the event that that there's a determination that you're not validly registered, if you fill out this registration form, you should have to fill out the registration form, or language close to that. But even better is that on the registration form, we have 12 boxes of items of information that we need, and many of those items of information are duplicative of the information that's required in the affidavit ballot. For example, name, address, and date of birth. So that instead of having a whole registration form, I would only put a list of the items that are not already of the items that are not duplicative of the name, address, and date of birth, with an explanation. And for that reason, I think we're better off waiting before final adoption of the form. But I'm told we need to send something out to the counties for the primary. And with the addition of that sentence, well, that's the question, Todd. I would rather work on this to come up with a unified form that more closely tracks the intent of the statute. And to pass it around to the various advocacy groups so that they can look at it and comment on it. and try to have it ready for the July meeting.
I mean, I think the counties would prefer it sooner rather than later as they're doing their print runs, but on the other hand, if we circulate the direction we're heading in, which is to try to have a unified form by minimizing any duplication, I think you're right, I think we'd be better off because it's obvious people have more of an interest than I think we expected. I'll be honest with you, I didn't see that coming. But that's okay, so be it. We should respond to that, though. If people have some ideas, we should.
The only question is,
Pre-clearance is.
we need pre-clearance, and we need something for the primary.
In training. I mean, the concern is the inspectors have to be trained by July 15th under the statute.
But Bob, today, why can't we write the sentence?
Well, I've written one myself, but that doesn't mean.
Well, you could read it to us, but then take out instead of having a registration form, to have the boxes that contain the information that is not already in Part A of this affidavit.
I mean, if in order to have a form and get comment, if we're going to schedule a meeting in July, I mean, if we're going to do a form that's going to be temporary for this year while we work for the future, but if we're only going to work on a form in weeks, then I don't know that we're able to come up. And maybe we can here at the table today. I think Hannah and operations, what do we do with the poll worker training? At what point, that the county boards need something to train for the use this fall. Now seems that kind of time. If we kind of tell them what we're going to do and when we hope to have it done.
You see, I hear the training thing, but I don't understand it because everybody has this existing process in place now for affidavit ballots.
Except New York City.
Well, but they have some process in place.
They don't. New York City has nothing in place yet, and they're saying that they're not going to do. All New York City has is an affidavit ballot form.
I mean, that's what I'm saying. They have a.
Yeah, but they don't have a voter registration form with the.
But we approved that last year, and we had pre-clearance on that form last year. So, I mean, for our purposes, we don't have the Green Party, we don't have the right political parties on the voter reg form. If it's until the July meeting, I don't know that that's.
You don't need any training
an end all for that kind of an issue. If we're asking for the same kind of things, it's just.
All right, well then I would say let's do it in July, and let's try to put together a usable, integrated form, so that they're.
Just one thing with your explanatory note is I don't know, I don't have the original legislation in front of me. I don't recall if it says shall, the board shall use that to register the voter. Because if you give them an option of not putting that in, what happens with the board when they get the information and now it's not complete? So the explanation, it shouldn't be, they should just be required to fill in the information.
302.
Yeah, I mean, what I would envision is a form that eliminates, it's basically one form which will have the additional elements of the affidavit portion in it.
The only change it
I mean,
really
it's
is
really,
taking
I'm looking at it a different way.
Two forms that have been out there for years and putting them on the same envelope. And I know people want to change language and things like that, but it's worked for 75 years.
I was just going to offer that doing this in July, if you even got agreement and got a form in July, doesn't leave county boards enough time to incorporate these few changes, especially in Part B, and actually printing the forms and getting them labeled and packed into their supplies for use in the primary.
I understand. So they'd be continuing to use the old form
Here.
until we're able to do that.
But the old form creates issues in court in Part B because voters are told right now to check one box when truly there could be several reasons for them having to cast the affidavit ballot. That was an issue in several of the post-election.
From the commissioner's point of view, what I would rather do, if we're going to have to do something temporary, is to put the instruction and then only the information that's not already included, the voter registration information that's not included in the top. And you know, to answer Kim's question, you have 5.210.5.5M specifically says that the form of affidavit prescribed by the State Board of Elections for request for affidavit ballot pursuant to subdivision 3 of 802 shall be deemed to meet the requirements of this section. Any application, so I realize that that's ambiguous and bad drafting, because
It gets worse when you go to Article 5 and read what they amended there, because it speaks to the application on the envelope, and they adopted them at the same time.
Right.
So taking the two together is not artfully
right. But I think the legislative intent is clearly that there be a single form, not two forms.
Yep.
And the specific changes that were made last time really override the prior, so that I think you take it together that we should do the instruction and then do the additional information. And maybe the thing to do is to try to draft it this week, circulate it before we submit it for final approval to Justice, but perhaps the commissioners could bless the concept and let the staff work out the details, so that we could get something out this week without just copying the form this way, which is not particularly usable. What?
You don't think that is good this way?
No.
No,
This is very,
needs work.
Well, I wish it wasn't.
you
so
think it's
small.
feasible to
Here we
work
go.
on it this week? I mean, we're all going to be together.
This week's
We could
tough,
start
but it's not
circulate
impossible.
drafts.
In fairness to Anna, she has been pushing us on this, and I, for one, didn't pay enough attention to it, because I didn't understand the urgency of the ballot prints, but sorry about that, Anna.
Is that all right with you?
Yeah. Thank you for that.
All right, so my proposal is that the commissioners authorize the co-executive directors to put together a revised draft and then submit it to the counties and to the Department of Justice
for comment, for approval.
Well, first to submit, circulate the drafts both to the counties and to the advocacy groups so that they can do comments on it. And then once there's a consensus, to submit it to the Department of Justice for pre-clearance.
It's got to be, it has to have been adopted by the commissioners for us to submit it.
Well, that's what we're authorizing the co-executive directors to do this, so that when the co-executive directors sign off on it, it'll.
The other
they're
parts of
speaking
here
for
is
the-
just
I
not
just
quite
have one
right.
question for you fellas. Is this printing still going to be that small?
No, it'll be like this.
Well, we have
Well,
one
not
this
quite
big.
this
That's what I was
big,
going to
but-
say.
I went to bigger paper when I started to cut and
Just a
paste.
little larger, but
Yes, okay.
an envelope is more like this.
Because that is much too small.
Yeah, yeah. that's-
I think the one area of the
Well,
statute
they
that
could
is
use a small envelope.
impossible
We're
is
making
it
the
says
ballots.
the affidavit form needs to fit an absentee envelope. And I know that that's
Right.
just a ridiculous
You can't do it.
impossibility. And the Westchester form that they pointed us to is this size. So I don't think
Yeah,
anybody's
that's-
ever used
that's
an
all.
absentee envelope, you know, to make it that small that nobody can read it, just because that's what the statute says. When we get done, maybe they can clean that one up too.
Well, certainly that's one of the projects, is to rewrite the statute as we do the form. Since we're all looking at it, if we have changes to make in the statute, it certainly would make sense to put them together now and send them over to the legislature, even though the legislature probably wouldn't do it until next year.
All right, thank you.
All right, so that's my motion, is to delegate to the co-executive directors the authority to promulgate the form required by election law 8-302.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Before we vote for executive session, we want to set our next meeting date. And Todd, you said there's some time constraints we have for your organization.
Well, and also, before the executive session, I wanted to just discuss the one item on the Fair
Oh, right.
Campaign Conference Code that's in our enforcement provision.
Well, you have your petition, your designated petition filing period is July 11th to the 14th for this year. Typically, we would meet about 2 weeks after the end of that.
I remember there was a time we didn't meet in July because of that. We would meet the first week in August.
Oh, well, that would be 2 weeks after may end up being,
Yeah.
it would actually be the last week in July this time.
Yeah.
It just depends on where the filing period
Oh,
falls.
okay.
You're right.
So do you
Yeah.
want Monday or Tuesday?
Tuesday. I don't care, either
I
day.
can't do Monday, so.
Okay, Tuesdays then.
26th,
No, the 31st.
30.
Oh, I'm looking at the
You
wrong
could,
day.
you could,
Sorry,
Sunday.
sorry.
yeah, I was gonna
Sunday
say,
would
you
go
could go later, but
August 2nd is, right, you said Tuesday.
Well, you want
August
Thursday,
2nd.
the 28th?
I would suggest Thursday the 28th, because that Friday is the 54th day before the election, so if we're trying to be consistent with at least having adopted while we're not required statutorily as of today to have certified a ballot, we should try to start, so the 28th would work.
Okay, with everyone?
And this is our, knock on wood, slower year
And it's
for
a
filing.
Thursday? Did you say?
That's a Thursday, yes.
All right, well, the next meeting will be Thursday, the 28th,
July
sometime
28th.
around noon, right
Yes.
here. Okay. That is settled. Commissioner Kellner has something you would like to discuss?
All right, well, in our campaign enforcement cases, we have two cases concerning allegations of failure to comply with the provisions of the Fair Campaign Code regarding the filing of polls. That the Fair Campaign Code says that if in any campaign literature a campaign makes reference to polling information, that they have to disclose prescribed information about the poll and file it with the State Board of Elections within 24 hours. And I think we've observed fewer and fewer campaigns complying with that obligation, and indeed the number of polls that have been filed have been either 0 or 1 for each of the last few years. So that,
Here.
Go ahead.
Here. Candidates or whoever's commissioning the poll would have to file it in the place where the candidate has to file financial disclosure forms.
But now, most disclosures have to be filed here, so.
That's correct. But
So
just-
this is the place where they should be filed. And so I just wanted to note that we do have these two cases that we are proceeding with today that deal with this, and to remind the public that this is an obligation and that we are not ignoring that requirement.
It's 48 hours after the disclosure.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
Thank you for correcting.
I think that we
All right.
should probably do something on a informative or educational basis to let the word out that we're doing that, whether it be put in the handbook or otherwise.